So $330 billion is too low, you say.
Yes, that is the
Why?
point of view.
Why?
It's too low looking at ByteDance and some of its comparable businesses. I mean, just to take a step back, ByteDance is a huge business. It's digital advertising focused. It has apps including TikTok in the US, Douyin in China, and a bunch of other social media apps. And then in addition to that, you have a virtual reality business. You have all sorts of things in this giant company. And it's basically just now gotten to the point where its revenue scale is similar to that of Meta platforms. But Meta is trading at a much higher valuation multiple than ByteDance is if you sort of forecast out some reasonable projections for this year and next year's revenue. So the point to take away here, Akash, is ByteDance has grown really fast in the last couple of years, but a lot of regulatory issues, especially in the US, have contributed to TikTok trading at a discount to some of its peers.
Now you say revenue is around the same range as Meta. So how much revenue are we talking here?
We're talking the $200 billion annual revenue range.
Okay.
Obviously, ByteDance is private, so we don't know for sure, but there has been some reporting on their quarterly revenue. And if we sort of extrapolate that out, that is a revenue pace of around 200 billion for 2025.
And do we know anything about the growth rate of the business?
Yeah, so compared to last year, the Q2 revenue growth for ByteDance was around 25%. And it was a little bit faster last year. So there has been a little bit of deceleration in the business, but if you look at where ByteDance is growing and where Meta is growing, very similar growth rates, and actually ByteDance is a little bit faster.
So is Meta is one company that you could pick as a comp. Are there other companies that you look at? And we're only talking about companies based here in the US right now. I wonder if you looked at companies that are trading publicly in Asia.
Yeah, it's a really good question, Akash. I mean, Meta is obviously the one that comes to mind for a lot of people in the US. If you think about TikTok and Reels and just sort of the usage and consumption patterns of something like ByteDance's products. But in Asia, Tencent is a really good comp to look at as well. And Tencent also trades in the range of 6 to 7 times next year's revenue, which is around the same multiple that Meta is at. Now, if you look at ByteDance in comparison, once you do that projection, if you assume this year ByteDance is going to grow at 25%. And when I say this year, I mean 2025, the period for which they haven't reported yet. So not literally this year. 2026, if you assume they're going to grow at the same rate, 18% that analysts expect Meta to grow at, then we see ByteDance would be trading and is currently valued at a multiple of around twice next year's sales. So there's obviously a really big gap, not only with Meta, which is a US peer, but also with Tencent, which is a digital advertising Chinese business.
Now, you mentioned at the start the drama around TikTok's US business and that sort of being an overhang over the company's head, and maybe that being one reason why the company hasn't been valued as high. And I'm talking about the whole ByteDance business here. Is that the only reason that you see as investors undervaluing the business, or are there other parts of the business that still could remain questions even after TikTok US sort of, and we kind of have an answer now as to how that story plays out, right?
Yeah, I think that the regulatory overhang is the biggest thing without a doubt. I mean, it's been almost 5 years that there has been talk in the US about a TikTok ban, and regulators and the president have discussed that as a real possibility. That question is going to get resolved in about a week. So next week, that's when the deadline looks like it's going to pass. And it looks like ByteDance has so far been able to come up with some financing partners with a deal that should, in theory, appease the president and bring it into compliance with that order. And so I think that'll remove a lot of uncertainty for advertisers, for customers, even for sellers on TikTok Shop. But the other question, Akash, to your point, besides all of this regulatory stuff, is twofold. I think firstly, investors in the US especially do tend to apply a discount to all Chinese companies. So even though TikTok might be able to resolve their issue of US ownership, there still might be some jitters, some uncertainty around, can the deal actually close and what does the future look like in terms of the geopolitical tensions? The other kind of question that investors might be asking themselves is about profitability. ByteDance, just like so many other tech companies that we've seen, has been investing really heavily into AI. And they actually have warned, some executives have warned investors in the past that it could potentially drag on their profit margin in the future. We haven't seen that happen so far, but that's another consideration that folks are thinking of and that's top of mind.
Although I will say it's no different than Meta, right? I mean, Meta's advertising business is carrying the company, and that is the business that is highly profitable, and investors give a lot of credit to that business. And so you would think that at least in ByteDance's case, they have such a tremendous ads business. They should be given the same credit, even if they're investing in AI too.
Yeah, absolutely. And perhaps even more credit, I think you could argue, because TikTok, or not TikTok, ByteDance's apps in China are doing really well. They are actually a much larger portion of revenue and a much larger portion of profits. And they have been able to sort of implement live commerce in a way that has not really taken off on TikTok and in the US. And so those assets and the way that they're using AI in China has so far been really effective. And we haven't seen, exactly how the rest of the race is going to play out. But if you look at like one of ByteDance's apps, quickly became the most popular AI app in China. Whereas if you look at Meta
Which app was
AI,
that? Which app was that?
this is their one of their Chinese social media apps.
Got it. Got it. But and I think just to close the loop on this, I mean, I think the most interesting part of this story is that right now we only have the secondary market valuations to go off of because the company's not yet public, and it's been a big question: when will ByteDance go public? I mean, based on what you have been hearing, we obviously do a lot of reporting on this at the information. Do we have any sense about if it's going to happen this year, next year, how close we are to finally getting the financials in a very public way?
Yeah, wouldn't that be nice? Then we can do some analysis on them. But
Yeah,
no, I mean, this is something that's been anticipated for a long time. And we had some reporting in this recent piece that ByteDance executives at one point told investors that the company wouldn't actually be able to start the IPO process until this US issue was cleared up. So now
right.
that that's happened, it sort of suggests that it's possible an IPO could be on the horizon. Of course, there are a lot of different considerations that have to be taken into account. Will this be approved by the Chinese government? What other potential snags could there be? So it's certainly not a done deal, but I will say that it seems like the company is taking some steps that would position them well if they did want to take that leap.
Great. Well, Anita, I want to thank you for coming on. It was a great column. That is Anita Ramaswamy, our financial analysis columnist here at The Information.